Myles Garrett said something recently that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. Not because it was explosive, not because it crossed some line or created controversy, but because of who said it, where he said it, and what it means when you understand how Myles Garrett actually operates in public settings. He sat down with Micah Parsons during Super Bowl Radio Row, a media environment that is specifically designed to produce nothing of substance, where athletes show up, smile, say the right things, protect everyone, and leave without giving you a single sentence worth analyzing. And in that environment, Garrett looked at a microphone and told the world that Shedeur Sanders is the guy they're looking at, that he gets first service, that he showed real flashes, that the opportunity is his to take. I want to be precise about why that lands differently than it might from another player, because the messenger here is inseparable from the message. Garrett's entire public identity is built around restraint. He doesn't do manufactured controversy. He doesn't inject himself into internal organizational debates as a media positioning strategy. He doesn't use interviews to push agendas or send signals on behalf of factions within a locker room. His default across his entire Cleveland career has been disciplined, measured, professionally protective of the organization's internal conversations. That is who he is. So when he deviates from that pattern, when he says anything that can be read as taking a position in a quarterback competition that he has no structural reason to weigh in on, the deviation itself is information. People who know how Garrett operates don't just hear the words, they feel the significance of the fact that he said them at all. Let me slow down on the specific language he chose, because I think it's doing more work than most people have given it credit for. That's what we're looking at as the guy. He gets first service. He was the last person on the field and showed some real flashes. That is not the standard diplomatic non-answer that defensive players use when they want to stay out of offensive room decisions. That is not the carefully neutral both guys have a real shot framing that keeps everything technically open while committing to nothing. What Garrett delivered was a ranking wrapped in competitive language. Shedeur is the reference point. Everyone else in that room is being measured relative to him. The qualification, that he still has to go out and earn it, is appropriate and real, but the baseline being established underneath that qualification is that the lead already exists, and the job is Shedeur's to confirm rather than to chase. Those are meaningfully different organizational realities, and Garrett stated one of them out loud. Then Denzel Ward did the same thing separately, and that's the detail that I think elevates this from interesting to genuinely significant. Ward sat down with Kay Adams and said Shedeur gets first service, that he was the last man on the field at the end of last season, that the opportunity clearly belongs to him. Ward is not a guy who ventures casually into quarterback debates either. His instinct in public settings is professionalism, measured language, staying in his lane as a defensive back rather than positioning himself as an authority on offensive decisions. And yet, independently, with no apparent coordination, his comments landed in virtually the same place as Garrett's. Two of the most credible voices in that locker room, two defensive leaders whose standing is built on years of consistency and professionalism, both pointing toward the same player without being asked to campaign for him and without appearing to coordinate that message. That kind of organic locker room alignment is not background noise, it's signal. Here's what makes all of this connect to something larger than just two players saying nice things about a young quarterback. Todd Monken's coaching philosophy, specifically how he's been documented to approach quarterback evaluation, includes genuine weight given to what a quarterback's teammates say about him. Not as the only input, not as the overriding factor, but as a legitimate piece of information that film study alone cannot provide. The reasoning makes complete sense when you think about it. Coaches can evaluate mechanics, footwork, decision speed, arm trajectory, all of the technical dimensions of quarterback play. What they can't evaluate from film is what happens in the moments between plays, in the huddle when things are going sideways, in the informal interactions during practice that build or erode the trust that players carry into live game situations. Peer evaluation gives a coaching staff a window into that dimension. And when the peer evaluation coming from the building's most respected voices is this clear and this consistent, it lands somewhere meaningful in a decision-making process run by a coach with Monken's philosophy. This isn't going unheard. Now, I have to address the Watson situation directly because I think any honest discussion of this quarterback competition that doesn't reckon fully with the financial reality is doing you a disservice. $46 million in guaranteed cap money in 2026, fully guaranteed. A figure that no other team in the league has indicated any willingness to absorb, which tells you exactly what the market's assessment of that contract actually is, regardless of what anyone says publicly. That number creates real organizational pressure that I'm not going to pretend doesn't exist. There's a version of the argument for giving Watson another genuine opportunity that isn't completely without merit. He was, at his Houston peak, a legitimately elite quarterback, the kind of player who makes difficult throws look routine and changes games with both his arm and his legs. If even a portion of that player has survived 2 Achilles surgeries and the long recovery process, and if a new offensive staff under Monken can find a way to access it, the argument for letting that play out isn't purely irrational. But here's where that argument collides with a wall it can't get past. The internal characterization of Watson's physical condition, from people with genuine access to the organizational conversations, not from outside speculation, isn't that he needs time to get back to full strength or that his situation requires careful monitoring. It's more serious than that. The framing being used inside that building, as best as anyone outside it can understand, describes Watson as a genuine game-by-game availability, uncertainty that a coaching staff cannot confidently build a competitive structure around. 2 Achilles injuries, the original tear and then the re-tear during recovery, create a specific kind of physical fragility at the professional quarterback position that positive workout footage during the offseason cannot definitively resolve. And when a coaching staff is operating with that level of private concern about a player's ability to be consistently available, the football decision has essentially been made before the formal competition even opens. You can maintain the diplomatic language of competition publicly, but internally, the calculus has shifted. The sunk cost dimension of this is where I think clear thinking matters most, because it's where organizations most often make decisions that feel psychologically justified but produce poor football outcomes. The $46 million is already gone. It doesn't return if Watson starts week 1. It doesn't get recovered through any arrangement involving the quarterback room. The franchise has absorbed that financial reality and will continue absorbing it regardless of the competitive decision that gets made. The only question that actually produces different outcomes, the only decision point that genuinely matters for where Cleveland goes from here, is which choice gives them the best chance of building something that eventually wins football games in January. Orienting the starting quarterback decision around justifying a contract that's already been paid out is not a football judgment. It's a psychological response to loss, dressed up in the language of competition and opportunity. And it costs the organization the developmental clarity that its locker room is already, apparently, ready to move toward. What Shedeur actually did at the end of last season deserves to be examined specifically, because I think it's the foundation everything else rests on. 2 divisional wins as a cold start rookie quarterback. No preseason preparation. Defensive coordinators who had a full week of film specifically designed to expose the vulnerabilities of a player with limited professional experience operating without the cushion of preseason reps. Game plans built to attack exactly the things that rookies in unusual circumstances typically can't handle, and he found ways to win both of them. That result requires real things. Actual pocket management under professional defensive pressure, the capacity to adjust at the line when the initial read breaks down, the ability to keep skill players trusting and engaged when games get tight and the pocket starts collapsing, the competitive architecture to execute when it matters most. Shedeur demonstrated all of those things in conditions specifically designed to reveal any cracks in them. That's the foundation the locker room's belief is built on, not the name, not the draft conversation, not the platform. The actual football under actual pressure producing actual wins. I keep returning to a broader pattern in Cleveland's recent history that I think is the real context for understanding why this moment matters beyond the immediate quarterback competition. The franchise has cycled through a version of the same failure repeatedly, moments when a young quarterback had earned genuine organizational commitment, when the football case for fully backing him was clear, and the organization diluted that commitment through competing considerations, alternative candidates, or the residual weight of previous financial investments. Baker Mayfield went through a version of it. The inability to fully plant the flag, to tell the locker room unambiguously that this is the quarterback and everything from here is designed around helping him succeed, has been one of the most consistent and costly failures in recent franchise history. Not because the players weren't good enough, because the organizational commitment never arrived with the clarity that development at the professional level actually requires. What Garrett's public statement suggests, alongside Ward's aligned comments and what Monken's documented philosophy implies about how he weighs player input, is that this time might be different, not just as a formal depth chart designation, as the full organizational weight of a franchise that has decided it knows what it has and is ready to act like it in every dimension. First-team reps, scheme installation built around a specific quarterback's physical and cognitive profile, and a locker room operating from shared conviction rather than diplomatically maintained ambiguity that everyone sees through. When the most respected player in the building has already told the world where the building actually is, and when the second most respected voice confirmed it independently, the organizational clarity that young quarterbacks need to reach their ceiling becomes available in a way it hasn't been in Cleveland for a very long time. That ceiling question is ultimately the most compelling thing about Shedeur Sanders heading into 2026. He showed enough at the end of last season, in condensed, pressurized, unfairly difficult circumstances, to make the question of what he becomes with proper developmental support genuinely fascinating. Garrett sees it. Ward sees it. Monken's organizational positioning around him reflects it. The voluntary workout attendance, the captain designation, the locker room commentary. All of it points toward a convergence of organizational belief and individual hunger that Cleveland has been searching for at the quarterback position for the better part of 2 decades. Whether Shedeur fulfills every part of that promise is still to be determined. But the conditions for finding out, the first real conditions in years, appear to finally be forming around a quarterback who has already demonstrated he can win when the wait is real and the margin is thin.